If you're buying or building a new construction home in Kansas City, there are a number of different costs that, if unchecked, can spiral out of control very quickly. We're not just talking about upgrades, we're talking about day one costs, pricing factors, financing, deposits, and so much more, all of which impact the price you pay at closing and how well your new home appreciates over the next several years and beyond. This video is all about the 5 major hidden costs of buying or building a new home in Kansas City, and it all starts with out-of-pocket expenses.
So imagine this, you've just bought or built a new home, you've signed all the paperwork, you've closed on it, you're ready to move in, and then you just realize there's a lot of items that still need to be installed or things that you want in the home. So we'll just give you a quick rundown on some items that aren't always included in the build, starting with the interior. Window treatments. Most of the time, we are not going to see blinds or shades, curtains, things like that installed. Sometimes on model homes, we do see builders install those items, and so they would be included, but the vast majority of the time, they're just not. Other things like towel racks and toilet paper holders in the bathrooms, that's really kind of up to people's preference, the style, the design that they want, and then also where they're located. And so if you built a home, you could have those installed, but it's just not something that's standard.
And those are tricky because they have the little tiny Allen wrenches that are just a nightmare to tighten. When it comes to the exterior, one big one, I know a lot of you who might be dog owners, you've got kids in the backyard, you're probably going to want a fence. The cost we see for that, don't hold my feet to this, especially if you're watching this 5 years down the road. This is just, prices change. But as of today, you're going to be somewhere around $7,500, maybe up to $12,500 for a fence, depending on the size of the lot. Luckily, wood versus wrought iron, the costs are fairly equal. They're the same playing field, in the same ballpark right now. A lot of these new home communities, they're going to require wrought iron fences, gutter extensions, buried gutters. If you build a home from the ground up, maybe this is something that you negotiate to be included. But if you're buying a home that's already finished and you do an inspection, this is likely one of the things that's going to come up is, hey, we need some gutter extensions. Builders typically aren't going to include that as their standard because city code doesn't require it. When it comes to function, Jordan, this is one of the tricky ones. Some builders include it, some builders don't include it. It's garage door openers.
Yeah, that's right. So normally they're wired for it already. They've got everything in place and ready to go. Some builders include them, some don't. Sometimes we see on 3-car garages, they'll include one on the 2-bay side, but not on the 1-bay.
And the tricky part is there are some builders where I've had clients where it just made more sense for them to hire somebody else to install these because the price we got from whatever builder was just like sky high. So it all depends, but of course you've got a ton of different options from chain drive to belt drive to the ones that have Wi-Fi and security cameras, water softeners, security systems. It kind of depends on the builder. If you build from the ground up, certainly something that you can customize, but if you're getting a home that's already complete, usually not going to be the case. One tricky one here in Kansas and Missouri, the entire Kansas City area is radon. It's a toxic gas found below our foundations. And we always recommend getting your home radon tested before closing so you can take care of it after if something pops up. It's kind of a coin flip. Like maybe 50% of our homes, they test positive, 50% test negative. Most builders in Kansas City install a passive mitigation system, which is simply a pipe, usually around the sump pump, that actually goes up and usually out of the attic so that gas can escape the foundation, but they're usually not activated, which means if you do test positive for radon, we're sealing all of that up, installing a fan in the attic at the top of that to really pull that gas up and out of the foundation. And Jordan, now this is a long list. These can all add up to $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 before you even furnish the home.
Yeah, it could cost thousands of dollars, right after closing. And so it's something that you need to prepare for and just budget for.
Moving on to number 2, it's a big one and it's called Siren Pricing. This is not an industry term. This is something I made up. And I think it describes this problem very, very well. You'll find almost two different pricing models that most builders target. So you'll find some builders where if you're looking at homes online, yes, it looks like their price comes in a little bit higher, but oftentimes it's because they're including upgrades, features, higher quality materials that other builders might be charging extras for. Then you'll find the second version where, yes, they're charging extras for a lot of that. They're not including as many things in their standard features, but the price comes in so attractively low that it's almost hard to resist. And even though you're thinking in the back of your head, what am I missing here? What are the corners that are being cut? What's not included? Usually that doesn't come around until it's too late. And the reason Siren pricing is such a big problem, it's not just that there are a lot of moving pieces with new construction and prices can spiral quickly. It's that usually once you're locked into that contract, the deposit's non-refundable. We'll talk about that later in the video. That's when it really hits home that you're, typically going to be way in over your head for things you thought were already included.
Yeah, and on the flip side of this, we have what we call comprehensive pricing, where builders will include higher quality finishes and maybe more standard features in their homes, kind of getting you everything that you want, yes, for a higher base price, but possibly at a better deal than if you added all those items with the Siren pricing builder. But you just don't know for sure until you know exactly what items you want and you compare apples to apples.
That's right. There are a number of times when we've seen a property online and said, hey, we want to get this in front of our YouTube channel. We want to go tour this, and we walk through it, and it is just, we don't want to be associated with it. Like, yes, the price looks good, but there's always a point when it comes to new construction where, the difference, if it's $100,000 price difference, but $200,000 worth of value, and that matters because if you're in that home for 5, 10, 15 years, that difference in quality, the saleability factor of that home, that is really what becomes a big, big important piece of your decision to buy or build a home. So we do have a resource. It's linked down in the description, top 17 home builders in Kansas City. There are hundreds of home builders in Kansas City. All are different, but that'll give you some sort of idea of where a lot of these different builders fall. The best thing that you could do, any questions, buying, building a new home in Kansas City, usually specific to your area price point, the desired condition, the desired level of finishes, we can give you builders that'll fit both of these categories, ones that might make a lot of sense for you, ones that, hey, here's what you got to be a little bit careful of. That can save a ton of time, money, and everything else in the process. We also have a guide linked in the description, everything we know about new construction homes, but we are going to move on to number 3, which is all about price increases. This is one of the most difficult parts when it comes to buying or building a new construction home. And while most people run into something like this, the unpredictable costs, the increases, etc., when they're building, it applies equally to buying a home, even if it's already complete, because those costs are always factored in and you want to know exactly what you're paying for. So there are 2 different types of price increases that we generally see with new construction. But if you watch the last part, you pick the right builder, you're going to have a whole team around you working to keep these in check. We're also going to give you some additional ways that you can prepare for these, mitigate these as much as possible, and avoid a lot of them right from the get-go. So Jordan, the first one, it's all about site costs.
These are going to be the unknown costs associated with preparing the lot for construction. So this can be anything from tree removal to silt fencing for drainage control. But the big costs here are going to be below ground. So we're talking about undiggable rock. Whenever they start, digging that foundation, if they have to bring in a jackhammer, that just really increases the costs and it's unexpected. On the flip side of that would be if there's unstable soil and they have to do extra dirt hauling or possibly even pier for the foundation.
This is where the cost can really spiral out of control, which is why it's equally important whether you build or you buy a home that's already finished. It's why it's important to investigate all the costs, because if it is already finished, all these costs are already baked in. And if you've got 2 different options, one without those costs, one with it, we want to make sure you're not paying for something that you don't value. So there are many different ways that we can rein these in. There's no 100% certainty when it comes to them, but here's how we can mitigate the risk as best as possible. The first one is the builder will have a site cost policy. Some portion of that purchase price will be dedicated to an allowance that goes towards site costs. We want to evaluate, is that allowance big enough to cover the anticipated site costs, even the worst case anticipated site costs of building. The second one is actually the developer's site cost policy.
Yeah, and their policy is going to explain who covers what and how much. So what we might see is to where the first $5,000 is covered by the buyer. After that, the developer, they might take on the next $5,000 or share the next $5,000 with the buyer, possibly even the builder. And then after that, maybe it goes back to the buyer. So it really comes down to understanding these policies. And then we like to try and vet the lots as well with the on-site agents and find out what's been going on in that community.
Yep. So we want to look at everything that has been built near that lot you plan to build on or buy a home near. That way we can get a better idea. What cost did they run into? Was it undiggable rock? Was it diggable rock? Was it unstable dirt? Did they have to pier? How many piers did they have to use? But we know, just because we go through a lot of homes, we have a lot of clients who are building, we know that there are certain lot types, certain areas of town where you are more prone to this. So there are a lot of different things we can do to sidestep a lot of these completely, a lot of things we can do to minimize the risk a lot. But that's why it's important to take this trifecta approach of builder site cost policy, developer site cost policy, analyze the lots in the surrounding areas, but also have a good understanding of different lot types, which we'll get to here later on in the video. So that is all for section 3.1 of the video. We've also got a second flip side of price increases. It's actually 3.2, which is material prices. This is also known as an escalation clause, not the type when it comes to buying an older home. It's a little bit different. It refers to the escalation, the price of the builder's costs. A lot of builder contracts say that the builder can pass this cost on to the clients, and this is why it's important to prepare for this ahead of time, but also pick the right builder from the very beginning. Just like we talked with in Siren Pricing, you might find two different types of builders. One builder who, yeah, they're going to pass that cost along. They're not going to blink twice about it. And you're also going to find a lot of builders in Kansas City because we have a lot of local builders. A lot of them are generational. It's been in the family business. They're going to go to multiple different vendors, have them compete to get the price as low as possible. They might allow you to reallocate allowances to cover some of these unexpected price increases. This is becoming more and more of a reality as labor shortages, also tariffs, also the just general inflation, the cost of everyday goods continues to go up and up and up. That's why it's important, again, not just to get those site costs in check, not just to make sure that the builder is not, leveraging a very low price that gets you in at an entry point and then jacks the price up quite a bit later on. That's why picking the right builder is very important from the get-go.
Yeah, and it's super important to understand that escalation clause no matter what stage of construction you're buying the home in. So if it's move-in ready, maybe not as big of a deal, but if you're building from the ground up, that's where it matters the most because that's where prices are least predictable and your timeline is the longest and things can change. And so it's really just about understanding it and preparing for it.
That's a very important point. If you don't want to deal with any of this, but you still want new construction, even if you want to customize a little bit, then maybe it makes sense not to build a home from the ground up. If you buy a spec home that's under construction and it's past the framing stage, if it's past drywall, you can still pick out quite a few finishes, but all of these costs, the really big ones that could escalate, a lot of them are already baked in, so they're stable from the get-go. The best one, if you want to avoid this altogether, would just be to go after a move-in ready home. But even in those two scenarios, we want to go through and analyze the different things that are going into the price so you know what you're actually paying for.
Hidden cost number 4 is all about the deposits, and it's really, we have two that we need to talk about. That's the earnest money deposit and then additional deposits that can happen later on in the construction process. Starting with the earnest money deposit, we're gonna put this chart here on the screen, comparing it to older homes in Kansas City, just to give you an idea. But when it comes to new construction, generally, the deposits are anywhere from 5 to 10% of the purchase price. It can be more, it can be less. It totally depends on the stage of construction the home is in, the price point of the home, and then who that builder is, because ultimately it's their decision.
Yep. The other two big differences, it's held by the builder, not the title company. The builder can usually commingle with their funds used for construction process, etc. The final big difference, and the reason it's a hidden cost, is because that deposit is non-refundable, which is why everything else we talked about in the video is absolutely important. Because believe it or not, and it breaks our heart to see this, there are situations where somebody starts building a home, buys a home that's already under construction, their non-refundable deposit is already baked into this, and then they realize that there are site costs or material escalations, the price gets out of hand, and they have to walk away from that earnest money deposit, which nobody ever wants to see happen. That's why it's important to evaluate all of those things, but it's also why it's a hidden cost. The second reason it's a hidden cost is because that is cash you have to come up with out of pocket, right? So when you're, especially at the beginning of the construction process, most builder financing financing. We talk about this in a completely separate video. We'll link down below. Most builders will finance construction, but this would be the funds that you have to come up with out of pocket, just like if you were buying a pre-existing home. So that's why we call it a hidden cost. But the second major type of deposit we see with construction, this applies if you're, for example, building a home from the ground up or buying one under construction. A lot of builders, if you upgrade things or you do change orders and the price increases, some builders might allow you, depending on that cost, to roll it into the purchase price and roll it into financing. Some builders might ask for you to pay the vendor directly for those things, so like countertops, tile, etc. Other builders might ask for additional deposits. Sometimes it's 50%, sometimes it's 100%, but all of these can certainly add up in the construction process. They're all non-refundable, which is why it's really important to mitigate risk, go through the site costs, go through the materials, and make sure that every single line item we've accounted for, because we don't want that situation to happen where you have to walk away from those funds. We want to make sure that you're protected every step of the way.
Hidden cost number 5 is all about the timeline risk. This is only going to apply if you're buying a home that's under construction or you're building from the ground up. So there's several different reasons that a project can get delayed. And here in Kansas City, a big one is the weather. So we've got all 4 seasons here. Sometimes we have all 4 seasons in one month. So too much rain, snow, or freezing weather can really delay a project.
Yep, I had some clients where, they had arranged some temporary living arrangements because we anticipated the close date to be a certain date, and then temperatures went below 0 and kind of completely destroyed that, and we had to push closing out. So there are always situations that come up. No builder wants to be in that situation. They're motivated to close, and keep in mind that it's not like the national builders that you hear all these stories about across the country. In Kansas City, we've got local builders, generational builders, family business. They get it, they care, which is one of the reasons our market is so different. But these things always come up, and we always have to budget for them because the close date is never set in stone, because there are a lot of variables, acts of God, materials delays, labor delays, etc. Builders do have the right to change the closing date. So we always want to be monitoring that and making sure we've got backup plans in check. Jordan, another one is permitting. Some cities, Kansas City, Missouri, I'm not pointing any fingers, but they've recently updated their building codes. It's made it a lot more difficult to get a permit. And one example is we had a client building up north near the airport. We went under contract in April and didn't get started. We didn't have a permit until July. Think about that. It takes about 10 to 12 months to build a home. That is a large chunk of time to be sitting at dirt stage without even being able to start construction. So all the cities are different. That's why it's important to have somebody on your side that understands how a lot of these things are working, so that you save the money, risk, and time on the back end where some changes in timeline are possible. The final thing, we don't see this as much anymore, but material back orders.
Yeah, material back orders, that was a big thing during COVID. And then also a part of that would also be labor shortages. So you kind of touched on it earlier. Those things can cause huge delays. I mean, if you don't have the material or the labor, the project's not going to get done.
Now, I know that was number 5, but we do have a bonus round. It's a big one, and you're going to want to stick around for it really quickly. The way to sidestep a lot of this is to go after a home that's under construction, very close to completion, or one that's already move-in ready. But again, I do want to emphasize it's still important to run this entire check, look at all of the costs so you know exactly what you're paying for. Because a lot of these line items can add up to tens of thousands of dollars, especially with all of these moving pieces with new construction. So that's why the type of home you buy, the builder you hire, the city you buy in, all of this impacts your bottom line on closing day, but also every single day over the next 5, 10, 15 years that you live in that home. And we love to make the process as simple as possible, save you as much money as possible, make sure you get the highest quality home. So any questions, buying, building a new construction home in Kansas City, feel free to give us a phone call, text message, email. We've got a full video linked to the top of the description that'll take you through the entire process, everything we've learned from touring all these communities, different builders, floor plans, and also helping dozens of people through the process ourselves. And there's also a guide linked at the top of the description. But final part of the video, this is really what ties everything together. It's one of the biggest levers that you can pull to get the price down when it comes to new construction, and that is the lot.
And there's 3 reasons for this. The first one is the type of lot you choose matters, and that's because each one has different added exterior features. So for example, a walkout lot with a covered deck and a patio, that can be an extra $25,000, $40,000 added to the price. The second reason, site costs. We touched on it earlier. If you don't do your due diligence and vet these lots, it could easily add up to $20,000+ in one dig. Now, the final thing, lot pricing.
That's right. This is a big lever you can pull because it's not just those other two factors. It's also the actual price to purchase the lot or the price of the lot that move-in ready home is on. We've had clients just by switching from one to another and sidestepping the other two bullet points we just brought up, decrease the price up to $60,000 to $80,000 in one decision. And if you click right here, this is the full video that walks you through the entire process. It'll take you through not just the lot, but every other factor that adds up when it comes to buying or building a new home in Kansas City. So click right there. We'll see you on the other side.